remodeling the Washington Commanders through dead cap, restructures, and the strategic placement of fireworks this offseason.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground, credentialed member of the media, covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, also writing for Commanders on SI, and here with you 5 days a week. And coming up on today's episode to start the week, we've got a first full mock off season. Depth is important, so we're not going to forget about that. And speed kills, so we're targeting 2 Super Bowl winning free agents as the key to our overhaul. But first, while not every move is flashy, the backbone of the team needs to be intact before we can pack on some muscle. All of that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it's all brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. To reach your ceiling in the National Football League, it helps a lot. It might be even a little bit required to have a high floor to jump off of. So as we get ready for our first complete mock off season here on Locked On Commanders, we got to set the table a little bit. Obviously, Jayden Daniels is your quarterback. You've only got one running back on the roster right now, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Wide receivers, Terry McLaurin's under contract. Behind him, you got Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, Ja'Cory Brooks, and a bunch of other guys. Deebo Samuel not projected to come back, and I say it that way because it's not a final decision. That's not news. That's not solidified, but chances are, usually just looking at NFL history, when a team allows a player's void years to become dead cap, which the Washington Commanders did at the end of last week with Deebo Samuel, locking in $12 million of dead cap onto their salary cap. Typically, that does not lead to a player re-signing with that squad. Doesn't mean it can't happen, just not typical. So we, for the purposes of this conversation, are not going to talk about Deebo Samuel as part of the roster. Tight ends, John Bates, Ben Sinnott, and the cast of practice squad special teams aces. Offensive linemen, of course, you got Laramie Tunsil, Tyler Biadasz, Sam Cosmi, Josh Connerly Jr., Brandon Coleman penciled in as a starting left guard right now, with Chris Paul a pending free agent. Edge rushers, you got 2 guys coming back from injury and not a lot of depth. Defensive tackle, you got some guys out there. Deron Payne, we don't project to get released right now or traded in the offseason. Never say never. Of course, it could happen. Durante Jones, new defensive coordinator, obviously is going to have his say. Javon Kinlaw, Johnny Newton, Ricky Barber, who had a sack late in the season last year. Linebackers led by Frankie Louvu and Jordan McGee. Your cornerbacks currently, Marshawn Lattimore is the veteran in the room, Trey Amos, Mikey Sainer still, and others. And your safeties, Will Harris, Quan Martin, of course, role players, special teams guys, Jeremy Reeves, Percy Butler, Tyler Owens, also on there. Now, when we get through, so that's where we're starting from. That's all. That's not counting any expiring contracts or things like that. Obviously, Tress Way, Tyler Ott are on the roster as well for the special teams guys. But when we look at retention, who are the Washington Commanders going to keep? We've been doing our sign or walk series here on the show. You guys have been really great in participating in that. Marcus Mariota, 85% of you voted to bring him back. Bobby Wagner, 69% of you voted to bring him back. Treylon Burks, 93%, which I knew was going to be high. I didn't know it was going to be 93%. 93% of you voting to bring Treylon Burks back. The 100% contested catch rate, I think, helped a lot. The power slot idea, him battling it out with Luke McCaffrey for that job, I think attracted a lot of people as well. Chris Paul, very high as well, 90%. If you want to bring him back and bring his 78.2 pass protection grade, according to PFF, with him. And I'm going to go ahead and bring back a name for the Washington Commanders who left last year. And I know a lot of you since then have voiced your opinions on wanting to bring him back. He's not going to cost $10 million. In fact, he's going to cost a little over $2 million in market value, according to Spot Track. We're going to bring Dyami Brown back to Washington. That's gonna happen. I don't think he's going to wear number 2, but he's going to come back. We're also going to move on from Marshawn Lattimore. That is a move that is expected to be made. Again, it's not solidified. It hasn't actually happened yet, but it is expected to be made, which would give $18.5 million in salary cap back to the Commanders with no dead cap, which would obviously help relieve the $12.344 million dead cap hit for Deebo Samuel. You actually pay that off, and then you actually gain about $6 million in salary cap space. Now, on top of that, we also have some restructures to do here. Laramie Tunsil, not a restructure rather, but Laramie Tunsil getting an extension that is expected this offseason. It would be a reset the market extension if Spot Track's market value is what Laramie Tunsil ends up getting. However, through the magic of bonus displacement and all that other stuff, the Washington Commanders could actually reduce Laramie Tunsil's salary cap hit in 2026 to just $10.481 million. We are going to work a restructured deal with Deron Payne. That deal would add some void years, kind of like what we just talked about with Deebo Samuel. You're going to add some void years into the future. We're going to max that out at 4 void years. So you have this last year of his contract. 4 void years means that the cap hit in 2026 for Deron Payne turns into $15.93 million. And we push $12 million into dead cap for next year, which is the exact same amount of dead cap they had this year with Deebo Samuel. So basically, we're just going to keep that $12 million dead cap tag in place. Spoiler alert, the Washington Commanders could potentially do the same thing with Javon Kinlaw in 2027. Not necessarily the same exact numbers, but you get the idea. We're also going to go through and we're going to restructure Nick Allegretti. This is something that the Washington Commanders did with Andrew Wiley last year. They saw Andrew Wiley as very important, depth on the offensive line, mentor in the room, all that kind of stuff. But his cap hit was just too much. I think it was around $8 million. So they went ahead, worked out a restructured deal with him, lowered his cap hit to $4 million. What they actually did was up the amount of increase of guarantees, because like out of Andrew Wiley's remaining up to like $8 million he could have made last year. And again, don't quote me on that number. That's just what I think it was. None of it was guaranteed, or very little of it was guaranteed. So they made that $4 million guaranteed. So now you're guaranteed to make that much money, but look at the writing on the wall. You're not going to be a starter, probably, things like that. So it was a win-win for both sides. So Nick Allegretti, same situation. He's obviously a backup lineman at this point for the Washington Commanders. So you take his $7.178 million cap hit figure, you reduce the overall value of the contract, but you give him more guarantees up to that $4 million mark, and you basically cut his cap space in half. And what you end up with is just a bunch of cap space to work with, and a bunch of cap space to work with, a bunch of flexibility, and you already know at least where you are to a certain extent with guys like Laramie Tunsil locked in, with guys like Bobby Wagner back, Treylon Burks back. I mean, you're adding 2 names to the wide receiver room from that 2026 depth chart, or that original 2026 depth chart that we talked about. So now you got Terry, you've got Terry in there, you've got Treylon Burks back, and you've got Deebo Samuel coming back into the mix along with Luke McCaffrey, Jayden Lane. And all of a sudden, I'm not saying wide receiver isn't a need at all. It just turns into a little bit less of a need. And of course, as you go through the offseason, that's the goal for every NFL general manager, is you don't want to enter April in the NFL draft with any glaring need that any team knows that you're going to need. 1, you don't want to have that limited flexibility on your own roster. But 2, you also don't want your opponent to be able to know who exactly you're looking at, because then they can leapfrog you, take the guy you want. So that's where we kind of start off this mock off season. Next is where we start to get into a little bit of the even more fun parts of this, speed kills. So having a lack of it can be a death sentence for your team. We solved that problem with the addition of 2 Super Bowl champions coming up, and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by ZocDoc. Finding a doctor you like. You feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. You want someone who's in your network, they're nearby, they've got availability, but you also want a doctor who actually listens to you and makes you feel comfortable and explains things clearly. Sounds like condiment is impossible, right? Well, it actually does exist, and you can find it easier with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone you love without all of the hassle. So if you've been pushing off those doctor's appointments because you couldn't find that person, ZocDoc is here to help you do that. You can see real-time availability and book instantly. So stop putting off those appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring today's episode. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders also brought to you in part by FanDuel. If you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here is how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you're going to automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. You got flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock that in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds an extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick your cash, but it can also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered to win your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view today. And to the everydayers, those of you who come through for every single episode, a special thank you goes out to you for coming through for yet another one. The offseason does not exist for the Everydayer Club. Join the group chat and talk to Locked On Commanders year-round. Get every episode of the show ad-free and more. Head to lockedoncommanders.supercast.com or hit the link in the show notes today. Continuing now with our first mock offseason of the offseason here on Locked On Commanders. We just went through and re-signed a whole bunch of players and brought somebody back in Dyami Brown. Now, obviously, technically, Dyami Brown is a free agent acquisition, so I probably should have saved him for this portion of the conversation, but I was just so darn excited to tell you that we're bringing Dyami back to the Washington Commanders locker room that I just had to get it out of the way there. Now, let's look at some other free agents here, and some of these are going to be fireworks type moves. Some of these are going to be, just kind of type moves, and not every free agent signing can be a home run, right? I think that's important to remember as we get through all of these. So as we look at the free agent market, let's start by improving the defensive side of the ball. So you have the guys that we brought back to the roster, and then you have these guys that we're going to add here. And we're going to start with a guy who I think might be one of the primary fireworks guys, at least as far as like fan reaction be considered, and that's cornerback Tariq Woolen. 4.26 speed coming into the NFL. He's got length, but he's also going to be considered a little bit of a reclamation project, right? He started off his NFL career super hot, kind of, I don't want to say fell off because I think that's disrespectful, and I don't think that's exactly what happened, but just wasn't able to keep up that same quote-unquote elite level of defensive play. There is a lot of feeling around the Seattle Seahawks, and feelings are never confirmed news, so obviously we'll see what happens here, but there is a lot of feeling that with the amount of free agents the Seattle Seahawks have, they just simply can't bring everybody back. So they're going to have to be a little bit selective of who they bring back. And Tariq Woolen is actually considered to be a guy that, even though they like him, and obviously he's done some good things for them, obviously there was a stretch there in the Super Bowl where he was, public enemy number one in Seattle if things didn't go well. But, it's not a get out of here and don't let the doorknob hit you type of situation. But there is a predominant feeling that Tariq Woolen could end up being one of the guys that ends up out the door this offseason as a free agent. And again, that physicality, the speed, the length, I think he just kind of fits somebody that Durante Jones would probably enjoy working with. And then we're going to go to the edge group here for our next free agent, and we're looking at Odafe Oweh coming from the Los Angeles Chargers organization. Now, this one is again, I don't know that he's going to be the fireworks from like a Max Crosby or even like a Trey Hendrickson last year would have been type of situation, but he's an effective pass rusher. Is going to cost a little over $7 million in market value, according to Spot Track, and really kind of help you bring in a little bit of that edge pressure and that edge rush. Dan Quinn recently talking about wanting to get after quarterback, wanting to get after the head of the snake. I think that was on Kevin Sheehan's radio show, if I'm not mistaken. And Odafe Oweh is exactly one of those types of dudes that you bring him in. If Dorrance Armstrong can get back to himself at all in 2026, he and Odafe Oweh may give you definitely a solid piece of edge presence that you can definitely need. Bring back Jacob Martin on top of it. Bring back Drake Jackson. Continue his development back from injury. And I think you bring back Dietrich Wise Jr. as well. I think Dietrich Wise Jr., that big edge, run defending type of edge, and it gives you a little bit of versatility. So if you're Durante Jones, whatever the situation is between Dorrance, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Odafe Oweh, Jake Martin, Drake Jackson, Dietrich Wise Jr., you now have the flexibility to kind of attack the edge any way you need to. Moving into the interior of the defensive line, I think you got to go find that anchor. You got to go find that guy that can be that nose tackle and two gap and just kind of hold the point of attack if you need him to. And I'm looking at DJ Reader, a little bit of an older veteran, but you're only looking at him. You're trying to talk to him, or trying to look at him as like a 1, maybe 2 year placement guy. He's only going to cost you about $2.5 million according to his Spot Track market value. And again, when you add him to Deron Payne, Javon Kinlaw, Johnny Newton, Ricky Barber, you have a lot of guys there that have quick first steps that can penetrate, do things like that, but you don't have a lot of guys there that can just kind of hold the line, so to speak. DJ Reader is that type of guy, and again, gives the Washington Commanders roster an opportunity that, we don't have to go get one in the NFL draft. And even if we do, we don't have to push him onto the field right away because we've got a veteran that can hold that position down for us adequately while we produce, or while we develop, I should say, that rookie. Now let's look to the offensive side of things, and this is where I think the fireworks come into play just a little bit more. You brought back Treylon Burks. I think he's going to compete for that power slot position. You brought back Dyami Brown, obviously outside, stretch the field, speed threat, but you don't want to just hand that job to Dyami, right? I don't think anybody, even as much as any of us might love Dyami, you don't want to hand that job to him. So we're going to bring in Rashid Shaheed, our second Super Bowl champion. Tariq Woolen, Super Bowl champion Seahawks cornerback. Rashid Shaheed is the other one. Rashid, the vibe I'm getting is there's a little bit less of a chance he hits the open market than a guy like Tariq Woolen, but still a shot that Rashid Shaheed hits the open market. Right now, the spot track market value on him is $6 million per year, which I think is a pretty good deal. Now, if there becomes a bidding war here for Rashid, I'm not sure Adam Peters is going to get involved in a lot of bidding wars. More on that here in just a little bit. But if you could do that, he'll lift the lid on the defense. That's going to help David Blau get those 10 targets a game that he wants to get for Terry McLaurin by doing crossers and underneath and drags and hitches and running him deep as well and challenging. You throw one safety out there, and we got Rashid Shaheed and Terry McLaurin on the field, man, I might just run them both vertical and tell that safety, hey, you decide which side we're going to throw the ball to, and then we're going to take advantage of that. Running back position, I know he's not the sexiest pick for a lot of you out there, but we are going to go with Rachaad White. We're also bringing back Chris Rodriguez Jr., our restricted free agent in the running back room. Rachaad White, listen, he wants to come to Washington. Jayden's going to want him here. He's a 3-down type of running back. That's exactly what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have used him for ever since Bucky Irving made his emergence as the top running back in Tampa. And so he can pass block, he can catch, he can do a little bit of everything. You add him to Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt and Chris Rodriguez Jr., and you've got yourself a power back and C-Rod who can do a little bit of stuff like that. On the interior, you've got your zone stretch, your zone read guy, and Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. And now you've got your all-around third down back in Rachaad White. And for David Blau, it's really just figuring out the right combination of guys to use there. Tight end room, we are going to add there as well. And we're going with K-Dot. And the reason we go K-Dot and former Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end, one, David Rye, tight ends coach here in Washington, was formerly on that Buccaneers staff. So he knows K-Dot, and he can vouch for his work ethic, all these other things. He had 1,000 snaps for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He can be an inline blocker, stable as a blocker, but also capable as a receiver. I would say he's a shade above John Bates. So that's kind of where I would put him. Maybe not as good a blocker, but as far as overall tight end, he's a shade above John Bates. And again, Ben Sinnott, look, we all, I think a lot of us think that Ben Sinnott could be something special here, but until he starts to actually show it, you have to go out there and make sure you're kind of hedging your bet there. And think K-Dot is a guy. The great thing about him is he's not a Zach Ertz. He's not a guy that you're putting on the field above everybody else, no matter what. He's a guy who's going to come in and compete. You're talking less than $4 million against the salary cap. And so really you just have the opportunity to go through these tight ends and figure out who the guys are. And you're kind of forcing the issue a little bit. Like guys like John Bates, you're going to have to reprove your worth. Ben Sinnott, prove your development. Colson Yankoff, can you take another step? Things like that as you go through here. So who are some names that we missed out on? Trey Hendrickson, for one. Max Crosby at the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, he could be traded, but right now we're not going to go into the craziness of player trades in these mock off seasons. Trey Hendrickson, the expectation in Cincinnati is that they're actually going to franchise tag him and then try to trade him. If they do that, I don't think Adam Peters gets in the mix there. Wide receiver George Pickens is another person. Alec Pierce, we also missed out on. I think the reason we go away from those guys, Pickens is in the same situation with the Cowboys. The expectations are going to tag him and then either extend him or try to trade him. AP is not going to get into that, I don't think. And then Alec Pierce, I think once he hits the open market, because I do think there is a chance he actually becomes a free agent, his bidding war is going to get so crazy. I don't know that I think Adam Peters goes for it. Not that I wouldn't love it. I just don't know that he goes for it. And while everybody's bidding on Alec Pierce, that's when he slides in and gets Rashid Shaheed. Kenneth Walker III is another popular Super Bowl winner, Super Bowl MVP for the Seattle Seahawks. Doesn't block, doesn't catch. He's not a third down back. The Washington Commanders already have two backs that are not third down backs, so I just don't want to go there. Breece Hall is very interesting, and I think Breece Hall is honestly like the number one guy on the free agent running back board. The reason we went Rashad White is just because of that connection, and I just kind of have the feeling that that's going to work out. Breece Hall, again, another guy that could get into a bidding war, and for the running back position, especially with the shelf life and all that kind of stuff, I don't know that Adam Peters. I think Adam Peters would get more into a bidding war for Breece Hall to a certain extent than he would even Alec Pierce, just because of the relative level of talent into the position group. But I'm kind of weary of these bidding war type of situations and how Adam Peters might address them. So that's the moves that we made in our phase 2 of the offseason, mock offseason here. Starters are sexy, but of course depth is where that real value is found. We've added some guys, I think, in this first phase of our mock offseason that can help not only the front end, but also the back end of the Commanders offense or roster. We'll go over all those moves right now on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. And instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or online, whatever fits your schedule. They handle everything from your W-2s to your self-employment forms, and they work to get you every deduction. You can then upload your documents, go about your day, and get your updates right in the TurboTax app. It is a huge time saver and gives a real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it for a limited time. You can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate. Get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Wrapping up this first phase of our mock off season. This is a two-parter. We have this episode, obviously going through the re-signings, and then obviously the free agent additions. And then our next episode will be our mock draft that plays off of this as well. So going back through our depth chart post free agency, Jayden Daniels obviously leading the quarterback room. Marcus Mariota is back to help solidify things there. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt being rejoined by Chris Rodriguez Jr. and Rashad White. And honestly, there's plenty of cap room here. So if Adam Peters did get into a bidding war to bring in Breece Hall, again, I would not be against it whatsoever. You could definitely make that move as well. In the wide receiver room, Terry McLaurin, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, obviously already part of that, but we're bringing Treylon Burks back to come maybe compete for that power slot position. Rashid Shaheed coming in to be that opposite end wide receiver to take the top off, and Dyami Brown coming in as well, because Rashid Shaheed, as much as we love his potential, not as proven as you would love, bringing Dyami Brown to have a chance to compete there. John Bates, Ben Sinnott being joined by free agent tight end Cade Otton in the room. And then our offensive line bringing back Chris Paul. So we didn't make any free agent moves as far as external guys coming in on the offensive line, but we bring back Chris Paul, we bring back Andrew Wiley, and try to bolster the unit there. On the defensive side of things, Dorrance Armstrong Jr., Javonte Jean-Baptiste, and others, joined by Odafe Owe, Jake Martin, Jake Jackson, and Dietrich Wise Jr., all coming back. The defensive line interior gets some help from DJ Reader to join Deron Payne, Javon Kinlaw, Johnny Newton, and Ricky Barber. Our linebackers, we're bringing Bobby Wagner back, so he and Frankie are going to run it back for another year. Jordan Kane, Madrano, Ale Cajo, there to wrap up the depth chart along with DJ Johnson on a futures deal. Cornerback room, we put a cut line on Marshawn Lattimore. Trey Amos is obviously coming back. Mikey Sainer still. Tariq Woolen coming in as a free agent. We're also going to bring in two other free agents as depth, Caleb Evans and Jeff Okudah, both of whom have worked with Durante Jones in Minnesota in the past. Our safety room right now, and I say this right now, a little bit of a spoiler alert, you'll pick up the hints, right? Willa Harris, Percy Butler, Tyler Owens, Quan Martin, Jeremy Reeves, Rob McDaniel. No changes to the safety room through our first phase of our mock off season. But again, that is our first phase of our mock off season. We still have to address some other positions. We've got draft picks to go through, could use a little bit on the offensive line potentially. The safety room, I just basically told you we're going to address it. How we address it, I will tell you in that next episode of Locked On Commanders. And that's going to do it for this first part of our mock off season. So make sure you are subscribed, follow along with Locked On Commanders so you get all the latest episodes, and you get our second phase, our mock draft Monday, dropping later today. On audio, you're going to get both of these episodes pretty much back to back on YouTube. We do have to space them out a little bit. The algorithm punishes you if you drop videos too close together. So we will drop the second video, the Mock Draft Monday video, a little bit later in the day. So if you want them both, head over to audio. If you want them both on video, you're going to have to wait a little bit. Better yet, listen to them both on audio and then come back later for the video version of Mock Draft Monday. If you got that much time on your hands, would greatly appreciate it. So you can also follow me on X at DHarrison82, on Instagram at DHarrison_82. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is literally built for you. Go to lockedoncommanders.supercast.com to check out the Everydayer Club today. If you're next listening, check out the Locked On NFL podcast once in the morning, once in the afternoon, Monday through Friday on audio or on YouTube. And to the Everydayers, I see you. I appreciate you every single day. And I thank you again for coming through today. Until to everybody out there, thanks again for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the world. And until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We will talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.